The whole set became silent as soon as Jackie opened her mouth. It wasn't one of her trademark ludicrous plots or the typical back-and-forth shade. This was not like the others. Her voice carried weight. She looked at Chantel and Evelyn, as if she were going to say something that nobody was prepared to hear. The tension was evident in the air before the words were said, according to fans who saw the live recording. Within minutes, timelines began to flood with murmurs that the room burst when they did. On camera, Jackie asserted that Evelyn and the same man has been involved with Chantel, and a man with a strong bond with the inner circle, not just any man. The two froze in their seats, according to witnesses, their faces displaying a mixture of fury, astonishment, and something no one could quite decipher. Every gaze, every flicker was captured by the cameras. The audience was already taking out their phones and capturing every possible response by the time the producers attempted to defuse the situation. The revelation didn't merely start a chain reaction of pandemonium. It will be impossible to ignore the reaction of accusations, denials, and side chats. This common secret, whatever it is, has the potential to destroy more than just friendships. Jackie's remarks weren't merely said. Like a weight no one was prepared to handle, they fell with a crash. The audience responded first, with gasps breaking the stillness, and then a chorus of murmurs that became louder by the moment. Evelyn blinked again, her hands stuck in mid-gesture, her body rigid in the chair. Chantel opened her mouth slightly to speak, but nothing came out of it. Now the camera lights felt harsher, capturing every movement and change in their faces. Jackie reclined in her chair with the kind of composure that only comes after dropping a bombshell that no one else anticipated. She didn't yell, she didn't say the same thing twice. She simply let the words to linger in the room like smoke. There was the faint sound of a producer's voice in the background, attempting to signal a pause, but the cast remained stationary. The rest of the table appeared to be torn between fear and fascination. Some people didn't look up. People looked from Evelyn to Chantel, as if they were waiting for one of them to reject it or blow up. The silence was finally broken by Evelyn. She spoke in a steady, low voice. The tone you employ when you're trying to restrain your wrath. Jackie, you're lying. I have no idea what you're discussing. Jackie's brows raised a little, almost in amusement. Yes, I am fully aware of what I am discussing. You two also know. I'm sure of it. Chantel's voice broke the tension as she turned her head abruptly to, Jackie, don't include me in the narrative you're attempting to construct. Your made-up drama is not something I have time for. Jackie's mouth twisted into the smallest grin. Funny, as the narrative isn't created. I didn't need to search for it. People who had seen things came to me. Not just once, either. The audience leaned closer as she stressed the final phrase. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward Chantel, captured on camera. A quick look that would later be slowed down and examined frame by web fans. Chantel also caught it. What is meant by that appearance? Her voice rose slightly as she asked. Evelyn took a while to respond. Jackie only had to wait for that pause before pressing on. It indicates that she is aware that this has nothing to do with its veracity. It's about how much is already known by others. There was an audible reaction from the studio audience, a mixture of surprise and excitement. Some of the crews shuffled uneasily, obviously knowing that this would be the clip that everyone would be talking about once it happened live. After letting out a deep breath, Evelyn leaned forward and fixed Jackie with her gaze. Jackie shrugged, unconcerned. You've made a career out of manipulating things to get attention, but this is low, even for you. Chantel crossed her arms and said, call it low if you want, but you can't call it a lie. Her tone was stern, but there was a slight hint of discomfort visible on her face. Who is this secret lover you are referring to, then? Because you had better have more than a few hazy clues if you're going to drag my name through the mud. Jackie cocked her head, seemingly relishing the occasion. Yes, I do have a name. You simply aren't prepared for me to say it aloud, in my opinion, but you are aware of who it is. You two do. The crowd burst into a roar at that point, nearly drowning out the microphones. The other women at the table looked at each other, some talking to the person next to them, others covering their mouths to conceal their feelings. Evelyn's eyes narrowed as her fingers lightly tapped the table. If you're so sure, Then say it. Go ahead. You won't because you know you're playing with fire. Jackie leaned in and said in a quiet voice that was audible to all, the sole explanation for, my silence is that before I do, I'm giving you both an opportunity to be truthful. However, it's okay if you continue to act like you're not. Remember, you're not the only one who is aware. She reclined once more, her composure a stark contrast to the growing hostility between Evelyn and Connell. As the voice toughened, Connell single quotes, I have nothing to be truthful about. Therefore, you are free to preserve whatever tale you believe you have. Her foot, however, tapped beneath the table as she spoke. There was a slight, agitated movement that was not missed. Evelyn also saw. A test before she could speak again, her lips tightened. The same is true here. I will not respect this bullshit. Jackie's eyes gently shifted between them, her stillness conveying more information than words could. Somewhere in the back, someone mumbled just loudly enough for the microphones to pick it up, and the whispers of the audience grew once more. They're both guilty. The remark landed, and both women tensed slightly, but it was unclear if it was intended to provoke. The focus was completely diverted from whatever the segment's initial topic had been by the magnetic tension at the table. The show was no longer the main focus. It concerned the potential for two women who had established their reputations on control, strength, and independence to become embroiled in the same scandal. The fact that Jackie wasn't giving up was the worst thing for them. She didn't have to quarrel or yell. She simply let the burden of her assertion push the job to the side. The director shook their head when a producer made a desperate motion to switch to a commercial. This type of unscripted, unplanned moment is what makes television so great. Every breath, eye contact, and posture change was captured by the camera, which remained fixed on the subject. Evelyn looked at Chantel once more, and this time, Chantel looked right back at her. For a minute, neither spoke, but their expressions were louder than any words could have been. Jackie then leaned forward once more, resting her elbows on the table. Her voice was hardly more than a whisper, yet it managed to capture the attention of everyone in the room. The fact that neither of you was aware of the other until now is the funniest part, she continued softly. Like a lightning strike that no one could avoid, the response to Jackie's final statement was immediate and electrifying. This time, the audience gasped louder and some even let out little yells, as though they had just seen a slow-motion car collision. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, into a scowl that might have broken glass after briefly widening. In contrast, Chantel sat motionless, but the tension in her jaw revealed the storm that was building inside of her. The ensuing hush wasn't void. Everyone in the room felt the weight of it, as though they all realized they were on the brink of something that could not be undone. Jackie reclined in her seat. Her poise was almost arrogant, as if she had practiced this very moment. You see, she went on, I'm not trying to stir up rumors or anything. She stopped, allowing her words to settle like dust after an explosion. This is about two women who have been living in the same lie without even realizing it. Pot for the cameras. Evelyn's voice broke through the tension like a whip. And now you both have to deal with the truth. The truth. Jackie, the only reality here is that you will say anything to remain relevant. Since the day you arrived, you have been after influence, and this is simply another of your pitiful games. However, the faint tremble beneath her tone was not entirely concealed, and it was immediately apparent to the crowd. Once more, whispers began to swirl, murmurs that sounded more like conjecture than denial. At last, Chantel spoke in a calm yet purposeful tone. Say his name if you have such faith in this tale. Let's check your willingness to move further. Her smirk returned as her eyes glinted. Oh, I'll say his name, but I guess you already know. It. The last thing you want is to hear it aloud. Evelyn hit the table with her palm. Everyone was startled by the sudden noise. Give up gaming and spit it out. Chaos ensued in the room as the audience cheered and chanted with some shouting, Say it, and others, Don't do it. Every wide-eyed response was captured by Kay and the cameras. Jackie looked at the crowd as though she was also assessing the weather. Give them the reward they begged for. Are you serious? With a playful tone, she asked. The crowd roared back, and then she looked back at Evelyn and Chantel with agonizing slowness. Lying, Jackie said, echoing. Funny because he told me himself. Oh, he didn't say it outright, of course, but he didn't have to. The way he talked about each of you, the way his story slipped when he got comfortable, it was all there. Evelyn shook her head, her voice rising. Marcus and I have history. Yes, but he's not my man. And whatever you think you know, it's wrong. History, that's your word for it. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been a lot more recent than history, Chantel said with a brief and sour laugh. This prompted more murmuring, and someone in the audience exclaimed, So, it's true. Jackie crossed her arms, obviously pleased with herself, saying, See, the problem isn't that you've both been with Marcus, it's a problem, is that you've both been with him at the same time, and neither of you had a clue. The tension increased so quickly that even the crew was unable to decide whether to intervene or let it burn. The way Evelyn avoided looking directly at Chantel told a different story. And Chantel noticed it too. You can't even look at me, she said in a cutting tone, because you know I'm right. Evelyn's voice was now cold, each word measured. You think you've uncovered some deep, dark secret, but all you've done is embarrass yourself. No one believes you. She is right. You know that. Jackie gave a deep, contented laugh. You two can't ignore what I just stated, no matter how much you try to blame me. And you'll be reflecting on it when you get home tonight, wondering how much of what you believe to be true was actually false. With all of their attention focused on the scene, the audience started yelling out their own observations of Evelyn. Most are simply hungry for more, while others are with Chantel. Sensing they had television gold, the producers dared not break in. Jackie sat there like the puppet master tugging at each string dot, and the tension between Evelyn and Chantel suddenly felt like it could break the table between them. Then, as if on cue, someone got up from the other side of the room. I've observed him with both of them. The woman made a loud announcement. As everyone in the room gasped once more, the camera zoomed in on her as the noise bounced around the room. Moreover, not on the same day and the same week. Evelyn's voice was sharp and her head whipped around. Who are you? The woman grinned. Someone with enough life experience to see when a man is playing two sides. Chantel's gaze grew strained. And you only choose to talk now? The woman gave a shrug. Up until now, I didn't believe it was my place. The energy jumped even higher as the realization struck the room like a second wave. The crew was rushing to get every angle as the audience stood up and shouted. Now, as the accusations grew stronger, Evelyn and Chantal looked at one another, their previous barriers beginning to crumble. Jackie, on the other hand, sat there, watching everything happen with the tiniest smile on her lips, as though she knew that this was just the beginning. Where there had previously been furious but controlled words, the atmosphere in the studio completely changed. Presently, the energy had become electric, dense, and erratic. The woman who had just finished speaking got up from her chair. She got up completely. People in the audience strained forward to view her as she stepped forward with purposeful assurance until she was near enough to the table. There was a certain assurance in her face that gossip rarely possesses. The words, "I've seen them both of them with the same man the same day," didn't just hang there. She raised her hand slightly, as if swearing an invisible oath, like a stone dropped into quiet water. They fell heavily. First, from somewhere in the audience, there came the sound of a quick breath. Then there were sporadic gasps, and then the room was filled with a low, rumbling hum. Her hair flung over her shoulder as Chantel's head jerked toward her. "What did you just say?" Her voice was steady, but every word was harsh due to the heat that was buried inside it. The female did not recoil. "You heard me. Same day. Same man, both of you." Evelyn's expression briefly softened before becoming stone-hard once more. Her eyes narrowed as though she was looking within her thoughts for a secure response. The muscles in her jaw were so tense that they could move beneath her skin. Some audience members attempted to covertly take pictures of her face. Jackie reacted, more slowly and thoughtfully. A glimmer of brightness in her eyes first. Then she folded her arms, reclining back in her chair with a sneer. She didn't care. Hiding. You see, I'm not the only one who says that. It has now been verified by another person who has no motive to lie. She savored the words as they flowed. Them. Like a predator who is aware that both of them have already been captured, she glanced from Evelyn to Chantel. Chantel stood up and pushed her chair back firmly. Even more attention was drawn by the sound of the wood scraping against the studio floor. Rumors are no longer relevant here. This has to do with treachery. With her hands twitching in rage rather than fear, she continued. And I'm not just talking about between us. This is from Marcus, from him. He has been deceiving us both, staring us in the eyes and acting as though nothing was wrong. And he assumed we'd never find out. The tendons in Evelyn's fingers were visible as her hand pressed firmly against the table. Despite a slight wobble, her speech remained steady. And you think I'm happy about this? You think I knew? I'm his victim too, Chantel. Don't make yourself the only one here who's been wronged. We both have. The audience's response was instant. Some acknowledged that both women had been played and nodded. Evelyn's remarks did not sound like outrage, others muttered. They had the sound of a silent confession. Chantel's forehead raised. A tiny, sardonic grin pulled across her mouth. You're acknowledging it then? You're acknowledging that something exists? Evelyn immediately retaliated. I acknowledge that he misled both of us. Don't turn what I said into your personal adage. Jackie gave a frigid, low, and brief laugh. Look at that, wow. For years, two ladies were unable to tolerate one another, recognizing all of a sudden that they have been battling the wrong person. There was a mix of applause and alcohol as someone in the crowd yelled, "Bring Marcus out, Kay!" The tension between those who wanted the drama to continue to build and those who wanted a resolution had turned into a tug-of-war. As the voice rose, above the cacophony, C.H. Nell single quotes, "Yes, I will visit him. I promise I will." However, that doesn't change the fact that you were seeing him when he was with me, she said, pointing pointedly at Evelyn. Evelyn leaned forward, her elbows planted firmly on the table, locking gaze with Chantel. And when he was with me, you were seeing him? Don't act as though you're superior to me in this situation. Both of us have been deceived. The earlier speaker moved closer to the table, obviously relishing her newfound authority. There are others besides you two. Marcus has dated more than simply you two, maybe more than one other woman. The audience descended into anarchy once. More after a single statement. People leap out of their chairs, yelling names and making bold predictions. While some urged the woman to maintain the mystery, others demanded her identities. Chantel gave her complete attention to Jackie. You were aware of this before tonight? And you didn't say it until now. Jackie's tone was harsh but cool, and she cocked her head slightly. I had bits of knowledge. I assembled them, and I bided my time until I was ready to present them. And since you both now understand exactly what you're dealing with, you're welcome. Evelyn lost her tolerance. You had the option to tell me privately. You had the option to tell her privately. However, since you enjoy being in the middle of the ruckus, you waited until you had an audience. Jackie grinned more broadly. The center isn't me. The focal point is the story. This mess was Marcus's fault. I simply brought the truth to light. The audience was divided in half, with half cheering Jackie and the other half jeering her, but everyone's eyes remained fixed on the table. She took a deep, steady breath, aware that the moment was still on the brink of something more, and she looked at Evelyn with a mixture of bitterness and reluctant recognition. Flatly, "We're not done talking about this," she stated. With an enigmatic expression, Evelyn nodded slowly once and said, "Not with each other, not with him." "No, we're not." The air grew heavy with questions about whether their next words would make them enemies or comrades as they looked at each other for a few seconds. Jackie's voice was lower now but still audible across the table as she leaned back with her eyes sparkling. You both believe that you will be in charge of the story's future development, but you are not in charge of it. A low murmur of restless energy filled the room as the noise level started to climb once more. By adjusting their focus, camera operators were able to capture every small expression. For a long, anxious minute, It seemed as though even the air had become still as the door behind Chantel clicked shut, creating a pause between Evelyn and Chantel. Like he was planning his next move, his gaze moved around the room, examining faces. For half a second, they hovered on Evelyn, then Chantel, and at last, Jackie. The silence was first broken by Chantel's voice, which was piercing enough. "Look, who made the decision to appear?" "Good, as we have a lot to discuss." Marcus approached the table without averting his gaze. "Speak. There are charges against you, significant distinction." He spoke in a calm, measured tone, but his jaw was tense. The footage captured by the cameras was flawless. With her arms folded and her chin up a little, Evelyn reclined on her chair. "Therefore, what we have heard is a fabrication. It's all just rumors." Marcus narrowed his gaze and stopped short of the table. Some people hear his eyes flick to Jackie, so it depends on who you've been listening to, are skilled at transforming partial truths into a full-fledged circus. Jackie grinned instantly. She said, "Half-truths only hurt when the other half is just as bad," with a tone of delight in her voice. Marcus put both hands flat on the table and closed the gap between them, saying, "And judging by the way you're standing there, you're not exactly clean in this. Do you believe that I should provide this circus an explanation? No. However, because my name has already been tarnished in front of a live audience, here is the whole situation for those of you who are unaware." Chantal leaned closer and met his gaze. "I know enough, I see. I am aware that there are actual witnesses who say," she gestured to Evelyn that same evening and said, "You were with me in the afternoon and with her." The audience responded immediately. Shouts, gasps, and the shuffle of people bending closer. Marcus's gaze remained on Chantel as one of the men in the front row mumbled, "Damn," under his breath. "Bought enough for a mic to catch it?" Before Chantel could respond, Evelyn said, "And do you believe them over me?" There was a crack in her voice now, just enough to cause people to move in their seats. "Maybe we would have believed you if you'd told us before everyone else did." Marcus's jaw tensed. "The truth is more complicated than you may think. I will say this. Both of you mattered to me in different ways, and yes, maybe I made mistakes, but I wasn't trying to hurt either of you." Those final words only fanned the flames further. "So you admit it?" yelled someone in the audience. "It's complicated. The truth doesn't fit into neat little sound bites that get reactions from the crowd." The chant then began to half-yell, "Come on!" The loudness was increasing, creating a sound that seemed to be pressing against the walls, with one side shrieking, "Liar!" This is exactly what happens when you try to run the same game with two different people. Marcus turned his head toward her, his voice low but sharp. "And you've been waiting for this moment, waiting to throw fuel on the fire. Congratulations, Jackie. You've got your big scene." Jackie leaned back just enough to show she wasn't rattled. "My big scene isn't the problem." Chantel's voice sliced through like a blade. "The problem is that your different ways overlapped, and now you've got to face that without hiding behind half-truths. So tell me, Marcus, if you could have only kept one of us, who would it have been?" Chantel's question struck like a slap, and the crowd sat down, leaning forward, and phones tilted up, trying to catch his reaction. Evelyn's posture instantly stiffened, and her eyes narrowed. Marcus hesitated, and in that hesitation, the damage was done. Chantel remained motionless, her face unreadable, waiting. At last, Marcus murmured, "That's not a question I can answer here." Evelyn hesitated for a moment before catching herself. Boos erupted immediately. Some people laughed, others shouted insults. "That means you can answer it to just don't want to," a woman at the front said. Evelyn rose slowly, her chair scraping the floor with a sound that could be heard over the throng. Noise. "Then you've already answered it," she said in a flat tone. She didn't stop, walking around the table without giving Marcus another look, passing him so close that her shoulder touched his arm. CHNTL single, quotes as eyes followed. "Her," then snapped back to Marcus. "You don't get to dodge this forever. Not with me. Not with her." Not with anyone who's seen this. Who stayed? She asked, putting his hands on the table. Jackie leaned forward, her voice low but carrying. The game's over? But Marcus's expression told everyone else that it wasn't. Not even close. The crowd sensed it too, and the restless energy didn't go away. Instead, it grew. People whispered and theories were made. The next move, wondering if Marcus would try to win one of them back or lose them both. No one was willing to think that. This was the last time something explosive would happen between these three. Jackie sat back, a small smile curling at her lips, watching Marcus silently calculating. Chantel didn't break her gaze, and for a moment, it seemed like the whole room was holding its breath, waiting to see which way he would turn. Instead of turning to either of them, he walked to the edge of the table, straightened his jacket, and began toward the door. The crowd moaned and yelled simultaneously. He stopped just before he reached the exit, turned halfway back, and gazed at Chantel's for a long, loaded second before shifting to Evelyn, who was standing by the side of the stage, watching from a distance occasionally. Marcus then walked out, shaking his head slightly as he did so. The door closed behind him, making the same slow, heavy sound it had made when it opened, but the room didn't calm down. If anything, the tension increased as everyone there realized that his exit wasn't the end, but rather the pause before something even bigger broke. The fallout was immediate. Within minutes, clips of Marcus's hesitation were all over the internet. After Marcus left, the studio's noise level doubled, as evidenced by the way people moved and the way conversations overlapped so quickly that they became a single chaotic hum. Chantal remained at the table, her jaw set tight, her arms folded, her eyes fixed on the floor as if she were replaying every second in her head. Jackie sat back with that same quiet smile, the one that made it impossible to tell if she was satisfied or already planning the next hit. Fans slowed down and examined each frame, debating whether his silence was a result of guilt, fear, or strategy. Some claimed to have seen regret in his eyes as he turned back to Chantel, while others claimed he was looking at Evelyn as if he was terrified of losing her entirely. And with that, we leave you with more questions than answers. Will Marcus come forward to clear his name, or has he already decided on his next move in silence? You've witnessed the moments, heard the words, and observed the reactions in real time. Please share your thoughts in the comments section, as every detail counts in a case like this. If you want to be the first to know the next twist before it blows up, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and enable your alerts. You won't want to miss what occurs, I promise.